Reports are circulating online, spread almost entirely through pro-Iranian social media accounts, that Iran's new supreme leader has issued a fresh warning. If U.S. strikes continue, American military bases across the Middle East will become legitimate targets. The reports are unconfirmed. No official Iranian source has verified them. But in a conflict where the leader has not been seen in public since his father was killed, and where the ceasefire has been violated more times than anyone has officially counted, the line between rumor and escalation has never been thinner. To understand why unconfirmed threats from Iran carry this much weight in June of 2026, you have to understand what the last 3 months have looked like. Because what is being called a ceasefire is something the world has rarely seen before. 2 countries technically at peace, one of them running a full naval blockade of the other, with skirmishes happening every few days, a leader who may be gravely injured, and oil markets that cannot decide whether the war is over or just resting. It began on February 28, 2026. With no public warning and no prior announcement, President Trump ordered the launch of Operation Epic Fury while flying aboard Air Force One to Texas. Within hours, nearly 900 coordinated U.S. and Israeli strikes hit targets across Iran, simultaneously initiating Operation Roaring Lion on the Israeli side. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth described it in his first press briefing with 3 words: decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. Within the first hours of those strikes, a target that had been off the table in every prior U.S. engagement with Iran was hit. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, supreme leader of the Islamic Republic for
Strait of Hormuz is blockaded.
decades,
A ceasefire
and the single most powerful individual in Iran's entire political and religious structure, was killed. Along with him, his wife, several family members, and senior advisors. The satellite images of what remained of his compound circulated globally within hours.
Iran retaliated immediately. Waves of ballistic missiles were launched toward Israel. Iranian forces attacked the U.S. 5th Fleet Service Center in Bahrain. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq struck U.S. positions. Iranian cruise missiles were fired toward the UAE, 3 intercepted, 1 falling into the sea. A South Korean vessel was hit in the Strait of Hormuz. By the end of the first week, oil prices had surpassed $100 a barrel for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Among the most consequential single moments of the conflict's opening phase was a strike in the Iranian city of Minab. A U.S. airstrike hit what turned out to be a girls' elementary school. Iranian officials reported more than 170 people killed, the majority of them children.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei
A preliminary U.S. military
Reuters,
investigation
NBC News, and
later
CRS
found
report
that the
strike
strike
hit his
was
compound in
likely the
Tehran
result
on
of
February
outdated
28,
targeting
2026.
intelligence, not intention. In the court of global opinion, that distinction did not matter much. On day 10 of the war, Iran's Assembly of Experts, the clerical body responsible under Iranian law for selecting the supreme leader, named a successor. He was 56 years old. He was the second son of the man just killed. He was Mojtaba Khamenei. President Trump had already called him unacceptable. Israel had already described him as a potential military target, and almost nobody knew where he was or how badly hurt he was. 3 days later, Iran's state television broadcast what was described as the new supreme leader's first message to the nation. But Mojtaba Khamenei did not appear. A news anchor read the statement aloud while a still photograph was displayed on screen. The statement vowed to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed and promised attacks on U.S. military bases in any neighboring country that hosted American forces. Defense Secretary Hegseth responded by telling the press that Iran's new leader was, quote, wounded and likely disfigured. Over the following weeks, the conflict settled into a brutal rhythm. U.S. forces struck over 10,000 targets inside Iran. Missile sites, drone facilities, naval assets, command centers. Iran struck oil infrastructure across the Gulf, hit neighboring countries' facilities, attacked U.S. positions in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Major shipping companies, Maersk, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, suspended all transits through the Strait of Hormuz. Ships began rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 10 to 14 days to journey times. After 38 days of active combat, Pakistan stepped in. On April 7 and 8, mediated through Islamabad, the United States and Iran agreed to a ceasefire. The White House released a fact sheet declaring victory. Iran's navy had been, in their words, obliterated. 150 warships destroyed. Every submarine sunk. 97% of its naval mines eliminated. Trump's team called it peace through strength. Oil prices tumbled 13% in a single session. The Dow surged more than 1,000 points. But the ceasefire did not mean talks. Vice President J.D. Vance flew to Islamabad. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner joined the negotiations. On April 11, Vance announced from Pakistan no agreement had been reached. Iran insisted on a permanent end to hostilities and full lifting of sanctions. The Strait of Hormuz remained closed. And on April 13, Trump announced something that shifted the entire economic calculus of the conflict. On April 13th, Trump announced a full U.S. naval blockade of all Iranian ports along the Strait of Hormuz. We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, Trump said, because that's what they're doing. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned that Iranian oil storage at Karg Island would fill up within days, forcing Iran to physically shut in its oil wells, a potentially irreversible process. The blockade was declared to be costing Iran $500 million per day. The immediate human consequence of both the Hormuz closure and the naval blockade was the largest maritime traffic jam in modern history. Over 1,000 cargo vessels became trapped, unable to exit or enter Iranian waters without risking seizure or attack. 20% of the world's seaborne oil trade, the same share that passes through the strait every day, was disrupted. Insurance companies halted war risk coverage. Market-enforced blockades stopped flows that physical ships couldn't reach. At the American pump, the math was unavoidable. Gas had been $2.30 a gallon in Trump's State of the Union address in February, a number he had publicly celebrated. By March 10, just 10 days into the war, the national average had surpassed $3.47. It briefly touched $4.02, the first time since 2022. Even after the ceasefire announcement brought some relief, the Energy Information Administration projected the 2026 annual average would land at $3.88 a gallon. Trump, by then, was calling it a little glitch. Trump's public messaging on the conflict has followed a now familiar arc. In late March, he told allies on Truth Social to, and this is a direct quote, "Go get your own oil," adding that the hard part was done and Iran was essentially decimated. On April 21st, he declared the ceasefire extended indefinitely at Pakistan's request, while confirming the naval blockade would stay. And most recently, in a podcast appearance, Trump dismissed Iran's remaining military strength and predicted the whole thing would be resolved cleanly by Labor Day. Meanwhile, the ceasefire that is supposedly in place has seen skirmishes occur on a near-daily basis. U.S. Central Command acknowledged conducting strikes on missile sites and boats attempting to lay naval mines in southern Iran, calling them self-defense operations. Iran's foreign ministry called the same strikes a flagrant violation of the ceasefire framework. The IRGC claimed to have shot down a U.S. drone and fired on additional aircraft entering Iranian airspace. Iran struck Kuwait's airport. The definition of ceasefire appeared to depend entirely on which side was being asked. On May 26, 2026, Mojtaba Khamenei broke his 3-month public silence with his longest statement since taking power. He never appeared on camera. The message was again delivered via state media.
But the content was significant. He declared that regional countries would no longer be permitted to host U.S. military bases. He called for what he described as a new Islamic civilization. And U.S. intelligence, as reported by CNN, assessed that Khamenei had sustained severe burn injuries to his face, arm, torso, and leg from the February 28 strikes, and was still communicating only through in-person couriers, using no electronics whatsoever. And now, the reports circulating this week. Pro-Iranian accounts on social media are spreading claims that Mojtaba Khamenei has issued a new and specific warning that if U.S. forces continue their operations in the region, American military installations will come under direct Iranian fire. The reports have not been confirmed by Iranian state media. They have not been confirmed by any official Iranian government channel. U.S. officials have not commented. The line between psychological warfare, disinformation, and genuine threat escalation in this conflict has been consistently impossible to draw. 3 possible trajectories now exist. In the first, Trump's optimism proves correct. A deal is struck before Labor Day, the blockade lifts, the strait reopens, and oil markets normalize. In the second, the skirmishes gradually escalate. A strike goes wrong, a base is hit, casualties mount, and the ceasefire collapses entirely. In the third and most likely trajectory based on current patterns, the war neither ends nor restarts, but settles into a slow, expensive, diplomatically unresolved standoff that drains both sides, while the 1,000 ships still sitting at the mouth of the strait carry the economic cost for everyone else. Here is what is certain. A war that killed a supreme leader, installed a new one who has not been seen in public for 3 months, trapped over 1,000 ships at sea, pushed oil to nearly $120 a barrel, pushed American gas above $4, and produced a ceasefire that looks increasingly like a pause in hostilities rather than an end, is not over. The unconfirmed warnings from pro-Iranian channels may be psychological theater, or they may be the first signal of what comes next. At this stage, in this conflict, the difference between those two things has never been harder to know.